Hi everyone, it's Sarah Jensen, co-founder of Hue and Grace. Happy Earth Day. We have another Instagram Live today. It's been a packed day. I spoke to my sister this morning about her surrogacy experience. So this week is National Infertility Awareness Week, but it's also Earth Day. So the whole week we've been talking to different people and different experts about how infertility has impacted them. But today we're having through the perspectives. So I spoke to my sister this morning. I actually did an Insta Live and a press event with Rachel Zoe and Tracy Anderson today. And now I get to talk to Dr. Bojana.
Hi.
Jankovic Weatherly. I never know how you want to be referred to. So
I know my name is just so long. It's all, yeah. Dr. Bojana is okay. That's just usually the easiest for people to say and remember. How are you? It's so good to see you.
Oh, it's so good to see you. Oh, we have talked so many times over the past year. It's actually nice to see your face.
Oh, I know. Yes, I agree. Yeah. And you just moved
And I
to
was,
LA, I think, when we left LA, right? So we never were actually in the same, and then you used to live in Connecticut and we're now in Connecticut. So we keep missing each other.
it's fate. We will get together eventually,
Yes.
and I'm hoping you're in LA for a launch. So I'm still gonna kind of put that teaser out there. I'm gonna energy that you can come to LA in May 22nd. No, but also what a fun connection. I remember, so I actually went to an environmental working group summit a year or two ago. Time's kind of all blurry right now. But I remember seeing you speak and think that you are so incredible and so articulate and knowledgeable about this topic. And this is prior to us even launching Hue and Grace. And so I met Nika, went to DC, met with her. And so I've been reaching out to Nika and like, do you think that you could introduce me? She's like, well, let me see if she's interested. Let me see if she would want to talk to you. So I was honored that you did and do.
Well, I'm so glad we met, and I'm so glad that Nika and the world connected us. So
yes, and so fun for Earth Day to talk to you. So that's how we met. And I was going to read your bio. Your bio is very long and impressive. I'm happy to talk about for you, but if you just want to kind of give a brief introduction about your background, why you're on Environmental Working Group's board, kind of, and why you are the amazing doctor you are.
Yes, I'll give a little bit of an intro. So without going into too many details, I went into medicine as, we all do, wanting to heal people, wanting to help people, wanting to improve our patients' quality of life. And because of the fascination with the science that we're learning about and getting a deeper understanding of every day. And one of the things that I realized, and it was probably right around the time that I actually met Ken Cook, who is the president and co-founder of the Environmental Working Group, is that there are certain, while I am an internist and I practice within evidence-based medicine, but there are just certain gaps and certain things that are not often talked about and are under addressed in the medical training, and then therefore in the doctor-patient interaction. And those are the areas that I went and sought further training for. And so I did my integrative medicine fellowship, I did my functional medicine certification, I did mindfulness-based stress reduction course to really kind of gain a more comprehensive approach of helping people heal and supporting people with all of the beautiful modalities that exist out there that are based on scientific evidence that really take the whole person into account and everything that we know and understand in the current scientific literature. And so one of the gaps that I'm talking about here, and as it pertains to Hue and Grace, as it pertains to EWG and our interest in using products that are toxin free and products that don't contain substances that we know are either have the potential to be toxic or they're still being investigated and we just don't know enough about them. And that's certainly one area that is very much underaddressed and not really talked about. And I think EWG is such an important organization to both in terms of lobbying and advocacy, but also in terms of just providing that that information, that consumer information out there for people so that they can choose healthier products. They can choose products that are not packed with endocrine disruptors that we already know have certain effects on not just our endocrine system, but I mean a whole host of other things. And so it was around the time that I met Ken Cook at an event through mutual friends, and I realized there was like this whole body of scientific work and investigations that I wasn't sharing with patients, and that that certainly transformed my own life. So of course I went home as soon as I learned about all the dangers lurking, you know, and all the possibilities. I went home and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to throw everything away, all of my personal care products and my, you know, my shampoo and my moisturizer and whatnot. And but it, at the very least, it opened my eyes in the beginning to what are some of the things to look for? How do I avoid these, you know, some of these chemicals that are present? And then I started really talking to my patients about it. And I started talking to my patients about some of the things like the Skin Deep database and EWG's Healthy Living app, where people can go on and really find out about whether their products have certain potential to maybe have some carcinogenic qualities or endocrine disrupting qualities or allergy potential, and to figure out how to slowly phase things out that might potentially carry some danger with them, or just not enough evidence to say whether it's safe or not, and how to phase things in that we know are safe, that we know, you know, don't contain a whole host of ingredients, and brands that are transparent. I think that's another huge piece. I was just talking to Nika Leiba from EWG. We did an Instagram live last week. If anybody wants any in-depth information, it's on my my Instagram. But you know, one of the things that we talked about was that when people list the ingredient fragrance, that can contain, I think she cited somewhere up to 4,000 ingredients or something like that. So where's transparency in that? And how are we supposed to assess as consumers, who, by the way, also have a million other things to do? How are we supposed to assess whether a product is safe for us? And I think that that's really one of the big reasons that I wanted to get involved in this conversation, learn more, and thereby be able to transfer this information to my patients, who don't have to be detectives and look up every single ingredient, but really go to a database that is constantly being updated and learn where they can get safer products. Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
I know, and that's way better than me reading your bio, first of all. Because it talks about your interest. And it's so funny because I went through 14 years of infertility, and we went through all these I was altering so many different things in my life. I never once thought about my products. I never knew that products I was buying, you know, nice stores could harm me.
Right.
And I mean, I was doing, you know, acupuncture, and, you know, I was a runner. I had to stop running. It was just so many things. I'm like, wait, they didn't tell me that I should even look at my skincare. The products, like, that wasn't, and I was going to some of the best doctors in the world, and that wasn't even part of the conversation. So I think once I realized that, you know, the product, like, I was going through my treatments, I was putting on hormone creams. Like, what you put on your body gets in your body. Think of a nicotine patch. And so by realizing that, oh, these products, not only are they harmful for us, they actually are absorbed into our bodies and can alter our hormones and our health.
Exactly. And you know, and it's one of those things where we don't necessarily make that link, because we think, okay, well, if we're not consuming something orally, if we're not eating it, if we're not swallowing it, how can it possibly harm us? It's just really superficial. But studies have been done, even with sunscreens. This is another thing that Nika and I talked about. Even with sunscreens, when people just apply one layer of sunscreen, they've done studies and they've looked at how persistent some of the chemicals from sunscreens are in the blood of those individuals. And even just a single application can actually cause certain ingredients in sunscreen products to be present in the blood of those individuals for hours or even days later. And so I think that it's really important to be aware of that. Now, it doesn't mean that every chemical is bad, not at all. That's an oversimplification. It doesn't mean that it's bad that it's being absorbed, but we just need to be mindful of what is being absorbed. What are the chemicals on my ingredient list? You know, of course, we should still use sunscreen. I just want to make that clear. We should still use sunscreen, but we should just be very mindful about the choices that we're making, because these chemicals are being absorbed. And so what is that burden that we're willing to put into our body? Because our body, remember, our body is working really hard to detoxify from all sorts of, you know, chemicals that we're exposed to that we just can't help, everything in our environment. And whether it's, you know, pesticides that we may be getting through our food, whether it's certain pathogens, whether it's bacteria and viruses that we're fighting off all the time, just normal pathways, whether it's, you know, excess sugar that we're eating or processed food or whatever it might be, and then the chemicals that we're absorbing through our skin. So there are all these things that our body has to work really, really hard to detoxify. So when we think about that overall burden, and when we think about the impact of that on our system, it's really important to also recognize that there's no experiment has been designed that has looked at the combination of all of the chemicals that we're being exposed to. We are kind of that living experiment. And so trying to just be mindful of, how do I reduce this burden? You know, it's not going to be perfect. We don't need to get obsessive over it, but how do we reduce that burden with the knowledge that we have? And how do we just make it easier for our body to be able to process all of that? And that's really kind of what it comes down to.
And I think, thank you for that. And I know you are a mom with young kids, and I have a mom of 2 young kids, and you're incredibly educated. And I, you know, and my master's degree, I don't have the time to read every single label or even actually understand half of what it says on there. And so I would love to know what you, some simple things that you can tell your patients that they can right away start doing that feels like it's doable, that is achievable, that they actually are making a difference, and not because once you dive into the subject, it can be very overwhelming. And so I would like to know what advice you give.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think that for everyone, I think it's important to, I'll share some tips and some things that worked for me, and some of my patients, but I think that for everyone, it's such a personal journey. And I think that, you know, it's something that can take people, you know, months versus weeks to kind of slowly, you know, change some of the things and some of the habits and so on. And again, it's not about being perfect. It's just being mindful of these things. And so when it comes to personal care products specifically, you know, one advice actually that I heard also from Nika that we mentioned earlier from EWG is that think about if you think about replacing your products, think about replacing things that are staying on your skin. So your lotions, your moisturizers, your creams that are staying on your skin, because yes, certain soaps and shampoos and whatnot might have certain toxic chemicals in them, but ultimately we wash them away. And so the burden of that and the amount of absorption is not nearly as much as things that actually stay on your skin. So things like actually the products that you guys have and your amazing, you know, oils and all of that are things that actually stay on the skin. And that's the stuff that's going to get absorbed. So think about, you know, replacing those products first, because they're actually staying on your skin, as opposed to your, you know, soaps and shampoos and things that kind of come and go. And then as sort of the next layer, you know, looking at I mean, there's so many things, right? Looking at our makeup, looking at our toothpaste, looking at all of the, you know, as I like the soaps and that kind of as that next layer. And then, you know, if we move away from some of these personal care products, thinking about our you know, water supply. Where's our water coming from? Are we drinking water from plastic bottles that are leaching the plastic chemicals? And even the BPA-free bottles, they use replacements that are similar to BPA, and we don't really have the research there to know if these are safe or not. So thinking about what kind of container is my water in? Is my water filtered? Is my water source safe at home? Do I need to get my water tested? I mean, there are a lot of questions there. And EWG, again, is a great resource for all of that stuff. But so that might be, you know, the next thing. For somebody else, let's say if they have a lot of allergies and sensitivities to chemicals, and if they have, let's say, asthma or lung problems, it might be going to household products first and all of the things that we're spraying all the time. I mean, I'll tell you, since we moved to Connecticut, we got 2 dogs and 2 puppies, and they're incredible. But in the first,
you have 4 kids now.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like having 4 kids now. And so in the first few months, and even now occasionally, but especially in the first few months, I mean, they would just have like accidents around the home all the time. And I was just finding we were constantly spraying. And I was like, what is this doing to us? But, you know, you really need the smell to go away. So thinking about, okay, all the stuff that I'm spraying on surfaces to clean my home, to clean the floors, to clean the windows, you know, going to a source like EWG and seeing, okay, are the ingredients here reasonably safe if I'm going to be spraying this all the time and potentially, you know, harming my lungs? And there's actually a study that came out, I think this was about a few years ago, that actually studied people who have a significant exposure to household products and the deterioration in their lung function as a result of that. So, that's definitely another area that's important. But so I would just I would recommend, and this is kind of how I did it, doing it in categories, like personal care products, and then slowly phasing stuff out, slowly phasing new things in, then maybe water, then maybe household products, and, or maybe food might be a big one. I often talk to people about pesticides and the dirty dozen and the clean 15 list from EWG, and thinking about how do we reduce that burden of pesticides in the food that we're eating. So one can go by categories, one can go by things that they feel maybe they need to kind of correct the most. There's no right or wrong, just as long as you have like a sustainable and systematic way of doing it, so it doesn't become overwhelming. And then you stop and kind of throw your hands up in the air. Okay, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna bother anymore. But I think it's those little cumulative changes that ultimately do make a difference. Unfortunately, there's just no way of measuring exactly the pre and post in most cases, unless somebody has severe allergies, to know that, okay, this is making a difference. But it's trusting the science and trusting the fact that we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, it's interesting you're talking about measuring, because it's hard to measure. But I spoke yesterday with Stacy Colino, who is a co-author of Countdown, the new book all about hormone disrupting chemicals and fertility. And she said they did a study with men who worked in agriculture, but with around a lot of pesticides.
Yes.
And to the study, and they had zero sperm count, zero. And they pulled these men out, had a totally different environment, and slowly sperm started coming back. And so the fact is you can make changes, and sperm's easier to count and to measure than maybe some of our other health choices. But with that, like we started with skincare. We'll have other verticals in the future. But like the average, one thing I was shocked about, I learned from EWG, was the average woman puts on 168 chemicals a day, and the average man 85. And we said, how can we create products that, so that's I think 12 products a day for women, and I think 8 for men on average. But you think about anything from deodorant to toothpaste to different hand soaps throughout the day. I mean, when you start paying attention, you're like, oh wow, how many things
are adding up? Yeah.
And so we wanted to create products like our face serum, for example. It's face serum, but people are saying that they can replace their face serum, their moisturizer, their eye cream, and their vitamin C serum all with just one product. So I think it is finding products that work, but also maybe you can, you don't have to put on as many steps. And I'm not perfect. I still will wear makeup. I still will. I have certain things that I don't want to give up. But I think for me, when I was learning about these hormone disrupting chemicals, I mean, I knew about toxins. I just really never knew about these EDCs. And I thought, like, oh my gosh, I thought I was doing well. I thought I was doing what was great, but the fact that they still have these chemicals that can impact my hormone levels, and then realizing that hormones are related to way more than just infertility. I mean, hormones regulate your mood and your weight and your libido and your health.
Absolutely. And your thyroid hormones that regulate your thyroid function as well. And then, looking at the endocrine disruptors that regulate our metabolism and that have an impact on obesity. I mean, there's so many different processes that are linked, and there are certain things that have been measured either in animal studies or in human studies, looking at, for instance, the burden of some of the chemicals when people change their habits, or when they're when they're educated on the impact of this. And we see that when we change our products, we see that, there's less of these chemicals. And some of the things, sometimes people ask, well, what are the specific things I should be looking for? And there's just a whole list of these chemicals that's just too extensive to talk about. But one of the red flags, for me, when I see it on a product, parabens. And by now I feel like probably most people watching this have heard of parabens and heard about the link with the endocrine disrupting properties. But that's something that's, clearly stated in the ingredient list, different types of and there are different kinds of parabens and so on. But that's something that's very easily identified on an ingredient list that one can just, kind of disregard or not use. And they're really used as a preservative in these products. And it's interesting, I've always kind of wanted to ask people, because if the argument is that parabens are used as a preservative to basically increase the shelf life of products and so on, but clearly Hue and Grace and other companies are able to make personal care products without parabens. So is there a secret sauce that you then have to add instead, or does it just mean shorter shelf life, but there's still,
we
just without the.
It's interesting. So we were looking, but we knew what kind of products we wanted to create. And we have a great network, and we met with the largest beauty manufacturer in the world. Flew across the country, sat down with the chief innovation officer and their entire team. And we saw their products, and they're all the high-end products you've seen, Saks, all these places. And we explained what we wanted to create. They're like, can't do it. Like, we need chemicals to create, things that are cheaper or less expensive and have equal results. Like, we need these chemicals. So we went across the country interviewing different groups. The group we decided to go with was actually, they had a lot of award-winning products, had an introduction to them, and they've been doing 400 years of green chemistry experience on their team. Anyway, very, very well respected.
Yeah.
And the CEO walked in, and he sat down and he said, the world does not need another body oil. The world does not need another face serum. And we said, well, let us tell you what we want to create. And then afterwards, he's like, I've been doing this for 30 years. He's like, I've never heard anybody talk about it this way. And he said, the world actually does need this. He's like, but we, even being, so well versed in all natural and these the formulations, he's like, we need to figure out how to do this. So we have, our products are anhydrous, so no water, because a lot of products, if you think about it, lotion is 70% water. And so then you're having to put preservatives and other chemicals to stabilize it. And so we have a custom essential oil blend that acts as a preservative for our oils. We do have food grade preservative in our cleansing bar. But also that will limit the SKUs. We're not going to go into color cosmetics because you can't have it 100% safe. And then also with packaging. I mean, today's Earth Day, and so I did a press event earlier today talking about Earth Day, but packaging. We use amber glass bottles because amber glass protects the integrity of the product. Our secondary packaging, we ask people to recycle the paper, but it's actually, we don't use recycled paper because recycled paper does have hormone disruptors, or can have hormone disruptors in it, which is interesting because a lot of receipts are recycled and get into the paper. But then also, like, an interesting take on Earth Day. So you have natural resources, but there are also financial resources and human resources. And if we can keep ourselves healthier through the products we use, through our lifestyle, then we as a people are better equipped to take care of the earth and our future. And I remember when I was going through my 14 years of infertility, I was so focused on myself. Like, I just couldn't get out of bed some days. It was just a mindset that I could barely take care of myself and my husband versus thinking about what good could I do for the world. And so
because your energy was so focused on what you're having children, and so all of your energy went towards that.
Yeah. And so a big thing of why we only launched 4 products, and we want people to feel like these are 4 things you can use every day that really perform. That was also a huge thing for me. I want all my friends to want to use a product. I want to use a product, but I have very discerning friends in LA who,
I'm sure,
who I'm like, these need to perform just as well or better than some serums that are way more, double, triple the price as our serums, but perform really well, but also are meaningful. But it took a long time, like people, because I know we are outsiders to the beauty industry, and so to even get introductions, and then people say like, no, this is going to take a while to go back and forth and take tweaks and say, how do we do this differently? My husband used to run a wine company, and there would be, we had 60,000 wine SKUs or 6,000 wine SKUs, but you think about wine, it's grape juice. And there's a $5 bottle of grape juice, and there's a $5,000 bottle of grape juice. And what's the difference? It's how it's crafted. It's the ingredients. It's the time and it did take a long time, and you need special craftsmen, and you use people who are experts to be able to create. It's easier and faster and less expensive to create it where it's, we use chemicals that work, that aren't, and because it's not regulated very well, they're allowed to use it. So if you're allowed to use it, why would you go the extra step? And I think a lot of companies, if they already have a huge product line, and we call our products hormone safe, but if all of a sudden they were to launch a hormone safe product line, it would negate all of the other products that they have
Right.
out there.
Exactly.
So,
No,
so it's harder, and because we're doing this first off, and so all of our products will be this way. But it's hard to do. The fact that even these, you know, a lot of natural formulations groups had never even heard about it, or knew how to formulate this way. So it just took a lot of really great minds coming together.
Well, I think that's amazing, and what an inspiring story. I mean, really to, you know, go from your own kind of personal challenge and struggle to really creating something that's such a service to the world, and because with your products you're also creating that awareness, and you're also educating people, and you're starting those conversations, which I think are so important for all of us to have, because it's so easy to say, you know, I already have so many things on my plate. I'm already, you know, what am I going to start, you know, looking at, you know, what's in my products. But I think having that deeper understanding of the potential dangers, and the fact that, hey, these ingredients do get absorbed, and some of these are endocrine disruptors, and we don't know how they act when they're all together acting synergistically in our body. And so just feeling that relief of like, okay, here's the product, I enjoy using it, I love it, which I actually do, by the way, and thank you so much for sending me those bottles. I think I need a refill. But it, you know, your product, it smells so good, it's just such a, like, it feels so good on the skin. And so I think that that I'm so glad that there's greater awareness about it even in the industry. And that's so interesting that when you went to all these top places, at first they didn't really have an answer for you, because no one had really asked that question before. Like, it wasn't relevant, even though we all know there are all these studies being done in the background in the academic setting about, well, parabens can potentially be associated with this, or phthalates, another product, that's another ingredient that's often present in personal care products. And so I think that's just amazing that it's kind of like, it's just so easy to look the other way, right? And you're doing
it's easier.
opposite, and
or you don't want to think that these things can hurt you or your kids or your spouse, or, you know, anybody in your life. And so it's it's
and we see it, right? And usually the effects are not immediate, and like you said, unless, you know, those men that work with those in the fields that work with the pesticides, unless their, you know, sperm count is checked, they wouldn't know unless they started having infertility issues. And so the sort of the effects can really sort of sneak up on you, and you may not even be aware of them. So I think that it's just important to continue to educate, to continue to spread this information.
Well, I so appreciate your work that you do, and you being on. We're actually going to an EWG birthday event.
We are, I know.
Together. You were so, thank you for being on here with us, and we'll do more in the future and live in person. But this has been such great information, and we're honored that you come on with us today, especially for Earth Day. It's kind of very fitting, and love the work you do, and really appreciate you.
Thank you. And I love the work you do. I'm a big fan of you and Grace. And I look forward to seeing you in a minute at EWG Earth Dinner.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Okay. Bye, guys.